Hi, this is Jeff Curto, and welcome to episode number 210 of Camera Position, the podcast about the creative side of photography. Well, I'll tell you what, I can't think of a time in my life that has been more disconcerting than this past year. The pandemic, the disruption to our daily routine. We don't work the same, we don't create the same. We certainly don't socialize in the same way. We don't go out and see friends or family. And in addition to the pandemic, it also often feels like the world is just spinning off its axis. And I'm not going to get into the whole weird world of politics that we've been embroiled in, but suffice it to say that I just know that we are living in strange and uncertain times. And I also know something else that I've discovered over these last few months, and that is that the camera calms me. Well, this is true for me at least, and I'm going to guess that it is for you as well. When I feel that things are going a little bit sideways, I know that spending some time exploring some part of the world through the lens takes me away from the chaos and uncertainty and brings me back to center, to my center at least. And it doesn't matter if I just take a walk around the kitchen in the warm morning light with my phone or a more sophisticated camera in hand, or if I grab the camera and spend a few minutes just outside the front door seeing what the outside of the house looks like in the rain. If I take some photographs, if I contemplate the world and frame it up and push that shutter release button, it helps me push that disquiet away. And on those days when I can safely venture farther afield for a longer time, I'll tell you what, those days are even more profoundly satisfying. And I suppose for me, I've discovered that it comes down to focus, not camera focus, although I guess there is that too, uh, but of moving my cognition over to that right side of my brain, the creative side, and it lifts some of the weight of the world from me. And it's not only the focus on photography that brings about this positive reaction, certainly finding and thinking about subject matter, formulating an approach, finding a way to say something about the things that I'm photographing, finding the story inside the image or images that I'm making. All of that is a part of that sense of focus. But there's something else that happens, for me at least, when I'm photographing. And what happens for me is that because I'm concentrating on the idea of making images, my mind finds itself free to think of things that are not specifically related to photography, but are also not related to the practical matters of the world either. It's when I'm photographing that I think of titles for photography projects, for example, or ideas for future images that I want to make, things that I'd like to talk about here on Camera Position, or things that I'd like to talk with my photography friends about. Golly, I suppose really that's the same thing because I think of you listeners as my photography friends as well. Or ways that I can share information about the nuances of the medium of photography with my workshop students or my classroom photo students. All of that and more. And I guess I have to say that something similar happens when I sit down to import the images from the camera into the computer and begin to edit, sort, and adjust them, that whole world of post production. I'll spend a bit more time on that in an upcoming episode of the podcast, but for now, spending time working with the photographs I made at some earlier point, earlier that day, or even a day or two, or a week or two before, produces a similar but patently different feeling of calm and well being for me. And I don't think I'm alone here. I think those of us who have a creative streak in our minds find that getting out of our own personal day to day skin is one of the ways to promote good mental health. And man, oh man, do we all need good mental health these days. So, I'm wondering about you. I'm wondering if you find that raising the camera to your eye is a component of helping you create balance in your life. Let me know what your routine is here in the comments section below or in the podcast Facebook page, and I'll link to both of those in cameraposition.com and in the show notes for the podcast itself. So I'm glad to be back in front of the microphone. I'm glad to be talking and thinking about photography in these ways again. And I hope you're happy to hear me again, and hope you're happy to be listening again. And spread the word about the podcast. We're going to talk a little bit more about podcasting in general and this podcast in particular in an upcoming episode of Camera Position. But until then, I look forward to hearing your thoughts and hopefully having you calm yourself, calm your COVID-19 anxieties by raising the camera to your eye and making some photographs of some things that mean something to you. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you next time on the next episode of Camera Position, the podcast about the creative side of photography.